Hello and welcome. Today we are looking at a major development in the Middle East. After years of devastating conflict, a significant ceasefire agreement has been reached in Syria. This pact aims to halt hostilities across various fronts, offering a momentary reprieve to a nation scarred by over a decade of war. The deal comes at a critical juncture, as regional powers and local factions seek a path toward stabilization. We will examine what this agreement entails, who is involved, and what it means for the millions of displaced civilians hoping for a return to normalcy. This isn't just a political document, it's a potential lifeline for a country in desperate need of peace and reconstruction. To understand the significance of this ceasefire, we must look back at the conflict that began in 2011. What started as pro-democracy protests evolved into a complex, multi-sided civil war. Over 500,000 people have lost their lives, and more than 13 million have been displaced, roughly half of the pre-war population. The country became a chessboard for global interests, involving the United States, Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Various groups, including the Syrian government, opposition forces, and extremist organizations, carved out zones of control. This backdrop of immense human suffering and geopolitical maneuvering is why current diplomatic efforts are being watched with such intensity by the global community as they search for an exit strategy.
The specifics of this agreement focus on immediate de-escalation. First, it mandates a total cessation of offensive military operations, including aerial bombardments and ground incursions. Second, it establishes security zones where civilians can seek refuge without fear of targeted attacks. Third, the agreement demands the release of political detainees held by various factions, a major sticking point in previous negotiations. Crucially, the deal permits the free movement of humanitarian aid into besieged areas that have been cut off for months. These terms are designed to build trust between the warring parties, though the implementation remains the greatest challenge for the oversight committees charged with maintaining the peace.
This ceasefire isn't just a domestic affair. It involves a complex web of international players. The Syrian government and the main opposition umbrella groups are the primary signatories. However, the agreement's durability relies heavily on its guarantors, Russia and Turkey. Russia, a key ally of Damascus, provides the necessary pressure on the Syrian military, while Turkey influences various opposition groups in the north. The United States and the European Union have offered cautious support, conditioning further diplomatic engagement on the adherence to these terms. Meanwhile, regional powers like Iran and Saudi Arabia are watching closely, as the outcome directly impacts the broader Middle Eastern security architecture and energy trade routes.
One of the most immediate priorities of the ceasefire is addressing the humanitarian crisis. UN agencies estimate that 16.7 million people in Syria require some form of assistance. The agreement facilitates the opening of key border crossings, such as Bab al-Hawa, to allow convoys of food, medicine, and winter supplies to reach those in need. Organizations like the Red Crescent are preparing to scale up operations in areas that were previously inaccessible due to active fighting. For the millions living in camps near the Turkish border, this pause in violence is a chance to receive life-saving care and reconnect with families. The success of these aid corridors will be the first true test of the ceasefire's viability.
To prevent this cycle of violations seen in previous truces, this agreement introduces a robust monitoring mechanism. A joint coordination center, staffed by representatives from the guarantor nations and international observers, has been established to track violations in real time. Using satellite imagery and ground-level reporting, the center aims to investigate claims of shelling or troop movements within 24 hours. There are also consequence clauses built into the deal. If a faction repeatedly breaks the truce, they face renewed sanctions or the withdrawal of support from their respective patrons. While not a full peacekeeping force, these oversight tools provide a layer of accountability that was missing in many past failed attempts.
Despite the optimism, the path to peace is fraught with obstacles. Several groups designated as terrorist organizations by the UN are not included in the ceasefire. Their continued presence in operations provide a pretext for ongoing military action, which can easily spill over into broader conflict.
Furthermore, internal divisions within the opposition and the government's own hardliners threaten to undermine the agreement from within. There is also the issue of spoilers, local militias who benefit from the war economy and have little incentive to see the fighting stop. Trust remains at an all-time low, and a single misunderstood skirmish could trigger a return to full-scale warfare across the region.
The international community has responded with a mixture of hope and skepticism. The UN Secretary General called the agreement a critical step, but warned that it must lead to a political process in line with Resolution 2254. Humanitarian organizations have praised the access to aid, but emphasized that a temporary pause is not a permanent solution to the underlying issues. Markets in the region have shown slight stabilization, reflecting a cautious optimism among local investors. However, many analysts warn that without a comprehensive political transition, this ceasefire will merely be another strategic pause for parties to regroup and rearm. The world is watching to see if this diplomatic breakthrough can be translated into a sustainable peace.
As we conclude, the Syria ceasefire agreement represents a precarious but essential opportunity. For the first time in years, there is a formal framework intended to stop the bleeding and start the talking. The coming weeks will be decisive. Will the guns stay silent? Will aid reach those who need it most? And most importantly, can this pause lead to a political dialogue that addresses the root causes of the conflict? The people of Syria have endured unimaginable hardship. For them, this agreement is more than just a document. It is a hope for a future where the sound of sirens is replaced by the sounds of rebuilding. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at global affairs.